Welcome to the Super Spy Podcast.
Your adventure begins in 3, 2, 1.
Greetings and salutations, rock stars. This is the Super Spy, and I guess the main thing I want to tell you today is, well, if you didn't know this already, the news or the media is only going to tell you what they want you to know. Okay? Case in point, Russia. Here are the headlines from the major TV networks. Okay? Russia sees few reasons for optimism over U.S. response in Ukraine standoff. That was NBC. Biden, German leader, to discuss Ukraine at meeting. That was ABC. As Ukrainians pray for peace, Russia keeps hope for diplomacy alive. That's CBS. State Department spokesperson. It's Putin's choice whether he wants to follow path of diplomacy. That was MSNBC. And online, on CNN page, it has a link dedicated for live updates of Ukraine, Russia. Now, you're probably thinking, hey, well, this is important. Matter of fact, Super Spy, you mentioned it last week. You said, guys, keep an eye on what's going on overseas in this brewing war. And yes, I did say those words, but let me ask you, when have these networks reported on our own border? Now, I was pleasantly surprised to see the Fox network open up with 3 headlines about our southern border. That's right. Now, there are some who are more concerned over the problems over there, overseas. But here is what they said, what Fox has reported. Bombshell video exposes cover-up of Biden's covert migrant flights from border into U.S. suburbs. Texas Border Patrol agents find more than 20 illegal immigrant motel stash houses. Pennsylvania is the latest destination for Biden Air illegal immigrant flights. Now, I know that Fox is always, well, not always, but Fox likes to point the finger at Democrat presidents, but then again, they also pointed the finger at Trump, and so that's neither here nor there. The fact that they are looking at our southern border tells me that Fox at least cares about what's going on here. Not as much overseas. Yes, they do talk about the Ukraine situation, but they are looking at our country. But let's take a step back and see why it is so important that the majority of the media wants to ignore that imminent threat, okay? Why does Russia want to invade the Ukraine? Well, maybe, just maybe it feels a bit threatened by NATO's silent march toward Russia. Now, stick with me on this. In 1949, NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, had 12 member nations. Okay, when they first met, these nations created the North Atlantic Treaty. Okay? In that treaty, one of the articles, Article 5, stated that if an armed attack occurs against one member of the member states, it shall be considered an attack against all members, and other members shall assist the attacked member with armed forces if necessary. Now, that's not a bad deal for those nations that were bordering the North Atlantic, hence the name North Atlantic Treaty and North Atlantic Treaty Organization. But today, NATO has grown to 30 nations. You got Canada, you got the United States, and you have 28 European nations. Now, included in these European nations are 3 former Warsaw Pact countries, Hungary, the Czech Republic, and Poland. The Vilnius Group, which comprised Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia, were entered into the organization, and then they were closely followed in 2009 by Albania and Croatia. Now, here's the interesting thing. NATO's still growing. And in 2020, they allowed entry to the organization by North Macedonia. Now, none of these countries I mentioned border the North Atlantic. And NATO, well, they seem to be, and I'm going to say it, hell-bent to continue a move east and encroach on territories that border Russia. Enter Vladimir Putin. Now, I may have told you this before, but there was a time that I was at the same place at the same time with the younger KGB Putin. And to be honest, he's a slight man, nothing spectacular about his stature. But he had an aura about him, and it was an impressive aura. But not an impressive as in, wow, I want to be like him, but impressive as in, I could easily kick your ass kind of way. Now, I was about 50 meters away from him. We were both pulling a security detail protecting our government leaders at a summit. But the fact that I saw him and that I felt that aura about him, that speaks highly of him. And it doesn't mean in a good way, it doesn't mean in a bad way. It just means that he stood out. So understand this man. He is now the president of Russia. So for Putin, and if you look at it geographically, Ukraine is key terrain. Okay, that's a good intelligence analyst and actually a tactics term. But Ukraine is key terrain. This is a country that if it fell to the NATO eastward crawl, or even if the Ukraine formed an alliance with NATO, then Putin has failed in reasserting the Russian presence or relevance in Europe. Ukraine is the key piece in a reforming or forming, if you will, of post-Soviet strength. Now, why are we even thinking about sending troops? This bully mentality being shown by NATO and being fostered by the U.S. is not what the North Atlantic Treaty was about. It is the complete opposite. Now, thankfully, there is one nation, one NATO nation that is having second thoughts. Thank you, Germany. And I hope that they could bring some common sense into the situation and allow Russia and Ukraine the opportunity to relook what they used to have, the Minsk agreement, and that because that agreement in its origination would have quelled some of the tension if NATO had placed themselves as mediators or counselors, just someone to be there to make sure that they are going about forming this agreement and putting in the steps to follow the agreement. But instead, NATO became instigators and, well, bullies. Besides, as I said in the beginning, this just happens to sell. This is popular in the news. Now, partly because the West is still enamored by taking a stand against the Cold War era enemy, Russia. Mother Russia, we will crush you. And this hate for Russia It should not be allowed to blind the original intent of the NATO alliance, to protect their member nations, not to invade Eastern Europe. Hey, here's an idea, and I hope my boys in Washington, D.C. are listening. Why don't we focus on our own border? For some reason, no one wants to mention the tens of thousands of people crossing over the border every month. No one wants to talk about the drugs seized while crossing the border. Over 5 tons of fentanyl was seized last year. Now that's enough to kill 200 million people. No one seems to want to address the fact that migrants are being secretly flown from the border all across the U.S. One of the headlines I read earlier that Pennsylvania was one of the recipients of some of these, but it's not just Pennsylvania; it's all along the eastern seaboard. Now, and no one. Oh, by the way, these are government chartered private aircraft, and they're flying these immigrants to the Northeast, and no one wants to even look twice. No one wants to mention the buses taking immigrants that have been apprehended at the border, and they're dropping them off at cities across the Southwest. By the way, San Antonio is one of them, so to my friends in San Antonio, sorry. And here's an interesting fact. One of the reports says that most of the people being transported by bus are single men. I thought they were just families coming across. And no one dares point out that in December 2021, more immigrants crossed the border than the past 2 Decembers combined. Heck, more than 65,000 immigrants were apprehended in the Yuma sector between September and November last year. So ask yourself, where is the Biden administration? Well, I am thankful that we have Vice President Kamala Harris. She is right now representing the United States in Honduras, where she will, cheerfully I'm sure, attend the inauguration of the new socialist president, Iris Castro Sarmiento, for the country of Honduras. And President Sarmiento's campaign line, if you will, she is strongly opposed to free market capitalism. She's opposed to neoliberal economic models. And, oh, by the way, she has vowed to establish an alternative economic system. Now, this stresses me out. It stresses me out not because Ms. Harris is over there, or Vice President Harris, and I don't mean disrespect, guys. She is a vice president, and as a former member of the military, I support the office of the president and vice president, okay? But it stresses me out that there's more focus on overseas matters, Honduras, Ukraine, Russia, Pakistan, there's more emphasis and focus on these countries than our own. The money that we are doling out to countries is mind-boggling. We need to redirect that money and help our own homeless. I haven't logged down or, I haven't found the exact numbers that are being given to immigrants crossing the border. There have been rumors. I don't spread rumors. I will find those numbers. But I did look at something, a very interesting book that highlights what is going on along the border. It just so happens that I wrote the book. It's called Secrets Revealed, Terrorism USA. And it highlights the dangers that come across the border. And this has been happening for years, guys. Not just now, not just, this past month, not just since this administration came in. But in 2014, I wrote this book. And the dangers coming across are not just the immigrants. The immigrants pose a health danger, okay? And it poses an overcrowding danger, all right? But coming across are terrorists, drug dealers, cartel members, the infamous MS-13 gang members. And believe it or not, these terrorists that are coming over, they're associated with some heavy hitters, Hezbollah and Al-Qaeda. Now, what are we to do? First and foremost, I'm going to tell you, especially those of you that live along the border, I'm going to keep praying for your safety. But I implore you to do something that I took advantage of today. Take some time for self-care. Look, with the pandemic that we are, coming to an end to, and all the lockdowns and all the mandates and everything else that we've been going through and the uncertainty of stuff, it has created such a stress. Now take all that stress that you feel right now and add the stress of the people that are living on the border. Okay? We need a break. Everyone needs to take time off. And today, I took a respite, if you will, after work, and I treated myself and my lovely bride to a visit to the hair salon. That's right. The super spy needed a little follicle reimagining. And I found myself, of all places, in downtown Benton, Arkansas. Now, it is an extremely, I want to say old-fashioned Main Street. It's not Main Street, but it's their Main Street, and it looks really cool. All the old shops. They got an ice cream shop there. I'm gonna have to visit that again next time I'm in Arkansas. But here's the deal. I decided that I was gonna walk into the aptly named Sheer Grace Salon. Now, my stylist, Rachel, or unless it's Rochelle, I should have asked her. She is awesome, and she took great care of my wife and I, and we have never felt better. And I'm going to confess to you, I'm a third-time visitor there. There's nothing better than getting all prettied up by a graceful stylist as she. So visit your local hair salon tomorrow. Give yourself that treat. Nothing better than a fresh hairdo, whether it's a high and tight or a mohawk, or let's bring back the mullet, by golly. But if you find yourself, go. I want you to find a local hair salon and support them. They've had a tough time. They've had a very tough time during this pandemic, and everyone needs a good hairdo. Matter of fact, let's follow the example of our leaders, Nancy Pelosi. She even went to a hair salon. Of course, it was illegal because of the mandates we were under, but I digress. So go visit a hair salon tomorrow, and if you find yourself in Benton, head on over to the Sheer Grace Saloon. I'm telling you, you will feel brand new.
Hey, rock stars, you want to buy one of my books? I want you to buy one of my books too. I need something more than pizza for dinner. Anyway, my books are found on Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble. They are under the author name of Willis Bullard. So get your book and get it today.